Hello, everybody. Welcome back and welcome here. We've got a very special guest for you. We've got a quite a disturbing story about what happened to our guest, whose name is Jennifer Mayo, and how she basically got caught up like a lot of Americans get caught up when dealing with the government, especially if you happen to be a farmer or deal with certain types of animals. There are plenty of pitfalls that people can fall into without realizing it, and there are a lot of unnecessary and unfair laws. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I have obviously my significant other, my fiance, Donnie the Misfit. And our guest today is Miss Jennifer Mayo, who is going through quite an ordeal here. So before we get started, I'll let everybody introduce themselves. You already know who I am. So go ahead.
I'm just Donnie the Misfit. I'm a natural human rights activist and I'm also now a chicken farmer. And I love doing that. But my main thing is protect people's property rights and animals do fall in that category. And so that's pretty much all I do. You can go to coopandseath.com and check out our content.
Awesome. Great. And Jennifer, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of just about your background, who you are, all that good stuff.
My name's Jennifer Mayo. I live in South Texas and I raise exotic chickens for hatching eggs. And other than that, I have a day job of running some real estate.
Okay, cool. So,
You're a busy lady.
yeah, very busy. Wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
So before we get into everything that's going on, why don't you give us tell us a little bit about your journey of how you became interested in chickens in the first place and what drew you to dealing with rare and unique breeds.
So I don't know, we were about going on 5 years that things were just so unstable in the economy. And I said, if we have chickens, we've always got something to eat. They're fun. And so I started out with 9 birds. And I started, everybody calls it chicken math. There were other birds that I wanted, and I started bought me a little incubator, looking at hatching eggs on eBay, and they were so expensive. I was like, well, I'm in the wrong business. And so the gentleman who I run real estate for, he pointed out a corner of one of his land, and he said, well, take that corner and, build you something over there. And so I started out with a few exotic breeds, some Polish and some Brahmas, and started working on color variants and selling my eggs on eBay. And it was so successful. I was doing so well that I expanded, ended up purchasing another piece of property, expanded some more. I was running 39 different breeds, just beautiful, beautiful birds.
Mm.
Started doing a few of them on TikTok and just having fun with it. The families would come out and bring their kids to look around because anybody who was interested in chickens, we just had such beautiful variety that it became kind of a showplace. Our local newspaper did a little article about it becoming kind of a roadside attraction that people would come out and look at all the different varieties of chicken I had out there. And the egg sales were good. It was doing very well. Oh,
That's awesome. So what got you into Dong Tao chicken? What about them stood out to you that made you think, oh my gosh, I need to raise these beauties?
so actually, my brother lives in Asia. He's lived there for quite a few years. His wife is from there. And so, of course, I'm always looking at the most exotic breeds online, and that one always came up as a top exotic breed. And my brother being a team player, he called the guy in Vietnam, and they brought him a few birds, and so he raises a flock of them over there. And we talked a lot about the temperament of the birds and how quickly they grow, and they're neat. They're very neat breed. They're very calm, and they're oversized, and they kind of, I don't know, they act a little more like dogs than chickens, but they are fun.
Nice. So, I actually looked up something. I wanted to know because sometimes different breeds and different kind of poultry has like different health benefits. And so what I was looking at was, oh no, it went away. Uh, hold on. Okay. Well, the health benefits one was this says it's lower in fat content and has a high protein. And another thing I saw too, it says it's high in collagen, which could be actually pretty good for our skin, as women, and other people. So I feel like that could be like huge for the poultry industry for us to have, a higher quality meat here in America.
Yeah, I was of that opinion as well. The meat birds, the Cornish cross that many small farms tend to raise for meat, they grow so fast that they get to a point where if you don't butcher them on time, they can't even walk. Their build is just miserable, and the Dong Tao they grow nearly as quickly as the Cornish cross, but they don't have um, that same bad build is the best thing I could call it, and they're extremely unique and I'm of the opinion that it would not hurt us to have fresh genetics in our domestic fowl. Am I wrong about that?
I'm with you.
But
Yeah, I'm with you
Oh,
totally.
yeah.
I don't think that it would hurt us at all to shake things up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I had never even heard of a Dong Tao chicken before until I heard about your story, and I looked at it and I was like, "This is a weird looking chicken, but it's kind of cool. It looks like a little dragon or a raptor mix type of deal. It's very fascinating. I can't imagine why it would even be an issue bringing something like that into the United States. But when it comes to dealing with these rare breeds, would you say that's what makes your chicken business distinct, or are there other factors at play here? Because I mean, I haven't really, again, like I said, I hadn't even heard of that type of chicken. So I would imagine most other people, whether they raise chickens or not, hadn't heard of those types of chickens.
Yes, that's definitely something that I focused on was rare and unique breeds, and also trying to bring back some of the breeds that have been taken off the recognized poultry list. I've been working on some Russian Orloffs for a while. They were very, very popular 100 years ago. Now hardly anybody breeds them, and they've been taken off the recognized breeds. They're no longer shown. And I would just love to see some of those gorgeous breeds come back. So we do focus. We
Absolutely.
focus on the rare and exotic, but the Dong Tao they are incredibly rare. They're native to a small village outside of Hanoi, Vietnam, and the government sponsors the farms to keep the breed alive. So when I had gone there, you go through this big gate that says Dong Tao, and then each family has a section that is their part of the farm, and beautiful. It was absolutely beautifully maintained. There was a covered area. The elderly lady who had been raising those birds her entire life, sat me down. We had tea. We talked through Google Translate about the breed. And she's knowledgeable, just like our chicken breeders here are. She's talking hatch rates and growth, and they're just they're yeah, they're very, very rare, but also very loved over there.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely sounds like it. It sounds like they are very well loved, and I think there's something to be said about preserving these different species of chickens and even other animals too. I mean, I know there's a lot of efforts to go through that, but that kind of leads into another question. As somebody, I mean, you're running a small business here, and you've been doing it for a while. How difficult has it been to navigate these complex regulations that governments tend to put on small and large businesses, really?
So, agriculture tends to, you fly under the radar. You're just doing your thing until somebody notices you, and
Oh,
when somebody notices you, then we've had different issues. the city who did the interview and put us in the paper and was saying, how beautifully maintained everything was, ended up putting in a city ordinance about chickens. So I had to move them all to our property that was in the county, because I'm sure there was one complaint here or there. And I used to have people tell me how much they enjoyed, they would drive by them every day on their way to work and look for certain birds being out, and then the city was like, no, you can't be there anymore. There's been other complications. So selling hatching eggs on eBay. If you're mailing eggs from state to state, you are supposed to be NPIP certified. I've been purchasing and selling eggs and purchasing a lot of eggs for years and years. I've only ever had 2 boxes that came with the NPIP certification. It's a dead program.
Hmm.
But if somebody wants to make an issue of it, if somebody wants to say, hey, you're not NPIP certified, and you're like, well, no, neither are the 50 farms in my area. That's, they're testing for, they're, to become NPIP certified, you have to test for Polarium typhoid. There hasn't been a case of Polarium typhoid in Texas in over 50 years. I mean,
Right.
if we had Polarium typhoid, all the chickens would die. So that would be a pretty good indicator that we had it.
Yeah, yeah, that's
But for them,
Right.
fine.
but for
Right.
them
And
to
you knows
come,
what too?
oh, go ahead.
The NPIP is supposed to be voluntary, by the way, right? It was sold as it's supposed to be voluntary. So they're trying to force people to do that. It's contradicting what the whole purpose of this agency is for, or this
Right.
whole program is for.
Is
And to top that off, at one time I did attempt to get NPIP certified. There was no testers in my counties or the next 3 counties over. Anyone that they had listed on their website, I called and either it was a disconnected number or we haven't done that. I finally found a gentleman several counties away, and he's like, well, I haven't tested in years. He was like, but I'll come out there. And so he came out, he tested the birds. We sent it to NPIP, and they're like, no, no, we're not going to let you in our program. And just yeah, well, that goes on into later in the story, but
mm,
they were very in with the Texas Animal Health Commission, and the Animal Health Commission said don't let her in. And we were like, why? We tested clean, that's basically your only requirement. And they said, yeah, well, they told us not to. So
wow.
all yeah,
Well,
yeah,
let me ask you this. The organization that issues the NPIP certification, is that a government agency or is that a private organization?
so it is a national program funded nationally, but there are a different section in every state, I guess. And our current Texas section is done through Texas A&M. So Texas A&M Veterinary Health, Sydney Rosario is in charge of that program.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Be interesting to see what kind of funding they get for doing that, because I'm trying to follow the money here and figure out why this type of law would exist. Who would be lobbying for it.
Yeah,
And yeah, that it would be very interesting to find out where the money goes by, because especially since it sounds like the law is completely unnecessary and completely arbitrary. We have a lot of these laws at the federal, state, and local level that are really just designed to, help certain people make money, really.
right. And I do I completely agree for protecting disease from diseases. I mean,
Sure.
stuff spreads in chickens so quickly. But you do that on a farm level. You do that with boot wash, you do that with quarantine. You know, you have to be responsible for protecting your own health. A government agency to come in and stress my birds, catch every one of them, blood test every one of them for a disease that's and they're trying to say, well, that disease still exists in Asia and it exists at a high level, a version of it that we don't have here. I understand that, but that it's not carried on eggs. It's not carried on eggs. And if
Mm.
the parents even had the disease, the eggs wouldn't have hatched because it causes infertility. So
Hmm.
Yeah, the more you know, because a lot of people don't know these things. People take a look at what media is saying, what the government's saying. They want to, hey, let's kill this woman's birds, take everything from her. In order for the people to accept this, we have to vilify this person and
Right.
say things are untrue, and to scare her or not scare her, but to pressure you into a plea deal. And we'll get into that too. And
Okay.
so we have to really people really have to start not taking things from the surface level, what media puts in front of us, and actually start asking questions. A lot of people when we had to, told about your story, they're like, over a chicken? Over chicken eggs? Are you kidding? Are we not in the United States of America? So I was actually really proud of, Jeff and our audience of people who saw your story and just couldn't believe it. They're, flabbergasted. Like, this can't be possible over chickens. And so then in this articles they bring up health again. Like I said, we'll get into it in just a second to try to
Right.
make excuse of why it was okay to violate your individual rights, your rights as a property owner.
Yeah, and the media has been screaming, health. They put out there that they killed the birds because they were sick. We had one of the Dong Tao that was showing signs of Merrick's. We had them in quarantine. Merrick's is in 80% of United States backyard flocks. Merrick's is in the ground. It's not even a reportable disease. And so the other birds had been to the veterinary's office, you know, I believe it was 2 months prior to when they raided my home, and they were found to be healthy other than the bird that had the Merrick's. It was in quarantine, and they used that as an excuse to kill all of them. But my question is, if you really felt that my flock was infected, why did you stop at the Dong Taos? Why only kill the Asian birds?
Hmm.
I have over 200 other birds. They didn't kill any of them, so
Hmm.
did it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so let's just go ahead and get
Right.
into it.
And then
Oh,
when we look at the health of the bird, real quick, so if you look at the health of the bird, I want to paint that as a part of this story too. So, they said you smuggled quote unquote eggs into the United States, but someone who smuggles, why would you take, a black market item to a veterinarian to make sure they're healthy? Why would you have someone
Exactly.
come and test your farm and check for diseases and things of that nature? It makes no sense. You are very responsible. You're making sure your birds were healthy because honestly, if you're running a business or even trying to feed your family, if you're not taking care of your birds and not making sure they're healthy, what benefit will you get? They're not going to lay eggs. They're not going to produce any good meat. And who's going to want to buy them from you? So,
Exactly.
people have to start thinking about those things as well. But go ahead, Jeff. Sorry. I just want to throw that in right before we get into the legal stuff.
yeah, yeah, no problem. So let's go ahead and get into this, Jennifer. Can you just take us from the beginning? Just kind of walk us through the process of when the legal challenges with the government started up until, let's say, up until now.
Till now. So October of last year, three men showed up at my farm. And one of them identified himself as the Texas Animal Health Commission and and he was out. I don't know if I should. He was out of East Texas. We have a local office here. And when I asked
Mm.
him who the other two agents were, he refused to identify them. He just told me what cities they were from, which was
Mm.
also not our local office. Come to find out later, they never I told the local office they were here. One of those agents was USDA. We did not find that out for another year or so. But they started asking me questions about the eggs I had brought from Vietnam. They started questioning me about my farm, and they asked to look around. I let them look around, and they served me with two documents. One was a hold order, saying that I could not buy or sell or remove any birds from my farm, and I could not sell any eggs. So the part
So
portion
wait,
about
wait, time out. When did that begin? Like, do you remember the date
I
when the whole orders
believe it was
happened to you?
October 10th of 23. I believe it was October the 10th.
Hmm.
Before we jump into the rest of that, how did the hold orders affect your business?
It stopped it. It completely stopped my business. I was unable to conduct business in any way. And the
And have they ever been lifted?
uh, so at this point right now, I the hold from the state has been lifted, but I'm still under a federal hold.
Hmm.
My goodness.
So
So this has impacted your business. This has impacted your money. How are you expected to pay and care for these birds if you can't make money to do it? How do they expect you to feed your flock
that's a
and
very
take care of them?
that's a very good
It's like a
question.
setup.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And the portion about the eggs was not a standard hold procedure. It was not standard on their form. They hand wrote in and eggs. So it
Hmm.
felt very like like directly I was going to shut down my business. If my business had been selling meat or actual birds, they wouldn't have written that in. But because my business was selling eggs and not actual birds, he hand wrote in the bottom of that hold order and eggs.
And Jennifer, you haven't sold any eggs, correct? And you could explain why you haven't.
Because I've been under this hold since last year.
I mean, for the Dong Tao chickens, those that
Oh,
specific breed, you haven't sold any?
no, I've never sold any eggs. At that time when they came and placed the hold order, the birds were barely hatched. So there was no eggs to sell. I did not, the ones that I brought were for me to establish my flock. And I had, of course, plenty of requests for them. There's huge interest in that breed. Um, and on everybody, I just told them the same thing. It's going to be about 18 to 24 months until I establish a flock, and then, I'll release them to others. But that, of course, that never happened because the state shut us down.
Hmm. So yeah, so let's pick it back up. So they show up to your house. They don't really want to identify themselves. So take us from that moment. What happened then?
So they issued a hold order, and they also gave me a demand for records. And I said, I don't keep records like that. My records are on eBay. And he said, you're a dealer, you're required to keep records. And I said, I'm not a dealer. I don't. And so later that evening, I get on their website and I look it just blows my mind that they haven't read their own stuff. I get on there and I read their definition of a dealer, and I said, I'm absolutely not a dealer. I do not take birds to markets. I don't, I'm not required to keep records. And so they let that part go. But I kept for weeks. I called them. Yeah, hey, how do I resolve this? How do I resolve this? And so they sent the director of the Texas Animal Health Commission at the time. They sent him out to my farm. He said, "Okay, I'll give you two options." He said, "You can voluntarily depopulate. In other words, I could just let them come in and kill all my birds, or what I could do was let them test for Polarium typhoid, be locked down for 8 to 12 months, and then they would test again."
Hmm.
And I said, well, where did this come from? Well, we had a meeting and this is what we came up with. And I said, well, if I agree to this, what happens then? And they said, well, we don't know. I said, well, does the hold come off after the 8 to 12 months? They said, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know. That's the only answer we could get from them. And so there was no clear path to an end. And for the next year, basically, they were supposed to come out once a month and count my birds to make sure I was complying. Many times they wouldn't show up. But when they did show up, they would
Hmm.
come. I always let them in. They would count the birds. They would take just a random. It's hard to count running chickens,
Of
so
course.
they would just kind of take a random guess of how many birds I have and jot it down and move on. And there was just never any answer to what was going on. So, and I guess what I had no idea about was that they had gotten the USDA to investigate. And so in July of this year, I believe it's July the 2nd, they came and they raided my house. So my home has apartments connected to it. They kicked in all the doors. They handcuffed my tenants. They kept one of my tenants standing outside, handcuffed in his underwear for 2 hours. When he has nothing, he just
Oh,
rents here, and I wasn't home, so they had. From what I understand, there was about 40 officers here. About 20 of them were in full riot gear with automatic weapons. Oh, over chicken eggs.
Well, yeah,
Like,
you are obviously a
I
threat.
mean,
I mean,
and
you could have been hiding grenades in those eggs, right? They could have been egg-shaped grenades.
right,
Yeah.
right
I
over chicken
mean,
eggs.
think
They
about
had,
that. Over chicken eggs. I mean, they could have used those resources and all those men to actually find children who are being trafficked, but they're doing this over some chicken eggs.
and yes, and up to that point, we're letting the Animal Health Commission come in and count and do whatever.
Hmm.
All they had to do was call me. They came in, they served a search warrant. Like I said, I wasn't home. The gentleman, my people were here. They got him on the phone with me, and he said, "You need to come home now." I said, "I'll turn myself in. Like, I'll turn myself in before the end of the day. I'm out of town. As soon as I can get back there, I'll turn myself in." And they were just, it was a completely unnecessary waste of resources. You know what I mean? They could have just called and said, "Hey, we're coming out to your farm. Are you going to be there?" That'd be a good question. And it served their warrants or whatever they needed to do. It did not need to be a huge production. It was the U.S. Marshals that were in the riot gear, and I mean, look at me. Do I really look like I'm going to run? Oh, just yeah, it was completely unnecessary. But at the time of them serving that, they they asked the attorney I had at the time for permission to kill the birds, to kill the Dong Taos. And the attorney contacted me, and I said, "No, no, we're not giving them permission." And they my boss, who was also my friend, was here at the time, and they said, "Well, she gave the attorney permission." And he told them, "No, she does not give the attorney permission. I've talked to her." He's like, "Call her." And they're like, "No, we're doing it anyways." So they killed the surviving Dong Tao, and now we're facing our legal troubles.
So before we get into the actual charges, I wanted to ask, when they approached you in October, when they showed up, why did they show up? Like, what prompted them to come out?
Okay, so I felt that customs let me through with the eggs. They were in my carry-on. They were not hidden. I came onto U.S. soil. Nobody cared. I thought I was fine. I started talking about the birth on Facebook to other chicken people. I mean, we were excited. They were finally here. Like, um, it was a happy time. I did not feel like I had anything to hide. And another breeder who is out of East Texas, out of the same town where the original Texas Animal Health Commission gentleman came out of, she turned me in. She turned me into the Texas Animal Health Commission.
Hmm. I know you can't read minds,
Man, that's
but why would she do something like that if you're comfortable answering that question?
So she talked to me about it on Facebook. She said that she felt like I could possibly be endangering the Tyson poultry industry in Texas. Yeah.
I'm sorry to laugh because
Oh,
it's really
okay.
not
Here
funny,
we
but
go.
it's just I can't believe this. Like it's just one of the reasons why governments are able to do this is because there are too many civilians who are willing to help them. So that's kind of why I wanted to go there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And why
Uh,
would she care about Tyson? Is she a shareholder? Like, what is
you
she
know what?
worried about?
Yeah, honestly, other than seeing her around on the chicken show circuit, as a show, she shows Silkies. I never knew her, and I don't know her personally. So I don't understand why she had such a vendetta against me. My biggest thought would probably be jealousy, because having the first ones of those in the United States is going to be a big deal
Hmm.
whenever somebody does have them. And it'll happen,
Sure.
it'll eventually happen.
So,
Um,
so can you kind of walk us through, like you went to Vietnam to get the birds. Can you walk us through that process when you went over there, you got the birds, you brought them back through customs? Can just kind of give us the details on
Eggs.
that?
yeah, so it definitely not birds, it was eggs.
Oh, the eggs. I'm
And
sorry. I'm sorry.
so yeah, that is a big difference, and
Yes.
I could see them having a hard time with that. Uh, but so I went over there on a trip. My brother lives in Cambodia. Went to visit him, new baby, and so him and I flew for the weekend from Cambodia to Vietnam, and I looked up where the government farms were, and we found a guy on a motorbike, and he took us over there, and I purchased the eggs. Told the lady, hey, because there's been a lot of talk saying, well, Vietnam won't let them out of the country. I was at a government farm. I told the lady, I'm taking these eggs to America if they let me. And she was like, oh, that's great. And so yeah, got the eggs and flew back to Cambodia. From Cambodia, I flew when as flying home. I had to stop in the Philippines. I had a layover. At that point, anybody going to America was told to take their bags and go downstairs for inspection.
Hmm.
I don't know if they were Americans customs or Philippine customs, but it was only for flights to America. So I'm assuming they had something to do with the Americans. But I went down there. They searched through my bags. The guy said, "What kind of egg is this?" And I said, "It's chicken eggs." He said, "Okay." He sent me on my way. I get to LAX. Still nothing is. In fact, LAX was under construction, and it was such a mess that day that I didn't see customs. I don't know if anybody from my flight did. So they came to a point later, through all this, they're like, well, you didn't declare them. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't not declare them either. you know y'all
What are you
weren't
supposed to
doing
declare
anything.
too?
You Right, exactly. Nobody was there. So they everything was under construction. We got shuffled out a door that we couldn't get back in, and all of a sudden I'm outside, and I'm like, well, I never saw customs, because it was completely my intent to declare them. What I had read on the website for customs was that it was at the discretion of the customs agent.
Hmm.
So I was like, if they let me through, they let me through. If they don't, I had a wonderful experience on this trip. I did not go on that trip solely to purchase these eggs. I mean, that would be outrageous. I mean, it was an expensive trip. I
Yeah.
went over there to see my brother's new baby and to have a good time, and, to visit where he lives. The eggs was kind of a side thing. And I'm like, they may not let me through with these. If they don't, oh well. They were over there, they're $2.50 an egg. So it wasn't,
Right.
it was not a big risk. Not so I never thought it would turn into this.
And Jennifer, I want to ask you something, coming from like chicken owners and stuff like that. You had to, you show them your eggs. Did your eggs go through an x-ray? And how does that affect the eggs?
So when you're carrying eggs on a domestic flight, and you can carry hatching eggs on a domestic flight. You can say, hey, can you just visually inspect these? I don't want them to go to x-ray. I ship hatching eggs all the time. I'm sure they get x-rayed at the post office, despite the stickers that I stick on the box saying don't x-ray. But they were X-rayed. They were X-rayed many, many times. They were
Mhm.
X-rayed in every airport that I stopped at. You know, it was 5 flights, and
That's a
every
lot.
airport, yeah, every airport did. Now, I was told by the breeder in Vietnam that, you know, at best they have a 40% hatch rate, and that's about what I got. So I don't know if the X-raying affected them or not.
Okay.
You would think, if there's also this thing like, you care about animals and their health and stuff, right? Then you wouldn't want to put those eggs through that stress. Like you would think that there'll be some kind of training with agents and stuff not to do that. So it's not affecting the outcome of the hatching rate of those baby chicks.
Right, right, yeah.
So, okay. So you get them back home. Uh, you get your 40% hatch rate. They show up in October. And then in July, that's when it starts to really get real. They raid your home. What happens after that?
So I spent 12 days in jail, and because of, you know, Fourth of July holiday, and there was a hurricane, they shipped us to another jail. It was a whole experience, and finally get the bond, and they worked that out. I had apparently with the Fed, you don't just get a bond, you have to have a hearing about whether or not they're going to give you one,
It
and
took them 12
so
days
we
to get you in front of a judge. They put you in jail for 12 days before they got you in front of a judge?
Uh, no, no. So the within the first 24 hours, I saw a magistrate on the screen down in the
Okay.
bottom of the jail, and she said, "Well, you have to have a hearing of whether or not you're going to get a bond." And so then that was several more days because of the holiday. And so when we went to the bond hearing, they said, "Okay, well, you can have a bond." And by this time, I believe it was like Thursday. I don't remember.
Okay.
But so my family is there. We know the lawyers told us it's going to be $1,000. So my family's got the $1,000. They go downstairs, and the lady says, "You have to make an appointment to pay this money." And we said, "What do you mean?" Like, she's like, "Yeah, you have to make an appointment." So then the following day, there was no appointment, no nothing. And so that, I believe that was Friday. Then I'm stuck over the weekend. And then it wasn't until my family just went down there again with the $1,000 and said, "Hey, why can't we just pay this?" And they said, "Oh yeah, you can. You don't need an appointment."
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was crazy. So I spent some extra days in there that I shouldn't have by any means. Should not have taken that long. And so they finally get me released, and so when we're at the bond hearing, the prosecution says, "Well, we do not have an objection to her having a bond, but we want you to add a condition that she comply with the Texas Animal Health Commission." And the judge says, "Well, their state, I'm federal. We can't really do that." And so they had given her a copy of the Texas hold order, and she doesn't understand it. So she says, "Well, give me somebody who can explain this." So they put the USDA officer, Chad Bailey, onto the stand, and he talks in circles because he didn't really understand it either. They're and she's asking what specific terms mean. He can't explain it. Um, so there's a lot of confusion surrounding, and then you've got the mixture between the state and the feds, and everybody's kind of bumping heads, and nobody knows what's going on. And then you come to the point too where the I spoke to an attorney in this area, and he says you're going to have to go outside of this area for an attorney, because he said there's only three kind of cases that I've ever handled in that federal courthouse. And he listed, I guess, smuggling people, smuggling drugs somehow. And he said, and being in the country illegally. He said, other than that, I've never seen anything else in that courthouse. So he said, you're going to have to find you someone outside of this area, because they're just blown away by this. You know, the look I keep getting, any of the staff there, they're just like, eggs, you're really here for eggs? And I'm like, yeah, I'm really here for eggs. Like, I will say the people at the county jail, when they figured out I was there for eggs, they were super nice to me because they were like, this is ridiculous.
I bet they were.
So, um, huh?
I said, I bet they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah.
And so they gave you a court attorney. Can you kind of explain how that works and how to, um, how we ended up with the plea deal?
So there was some confusion while I was in the jail. I My family gave some money to an attorney that we thought could represent me. It turned out he could not represent me because you have to have a special license for the federal.
Hmm.
So at the bond Zoom meeting, she said, "No, I'm just going to assign you this gentleman. You know, you may have to pay for him later, but I'm going to assign him to you." And he seemed nice enough. He did, but when they went through a couple of months where they didn't have the discovery ready or they needed a little more time, and so I finally have a this uh, a plea hearing coming up, like a status hearing. Am I going to plea? Am I going to take it to trial? What? And my initial response to the attorney was that I wanted to take it to trial. You know, I would like to take this to trial. It's crazy. And he just looked at me and said, "Well, what is your defense going to be?" And I was kind of like, "Well, shouldn't you have possible defenses as the attorney?" But um,
Oh my
he didn't.
God.
He didn't. He just told me that he asked me what my defense was going to be, and I said I don't know. And I asked him repeatedly for the discovery, and he said it's too many pages to print, and I cannot give you electronic access, which I've later found out is untrue. But so I was never given access to the discovery. What I was given was about 10 pages of printout where apparently the federal agents got a warrant for my Facebook. And so they had all the messages between me and my friends that were joking around. I mean, we were just, you know, giggling and laughing about this
Like we all do.
other situation. Yeah. Yeah. And so he printed out the ones that just looked bad. Like if you took them out of context, it looked bad. And he said, "Well, this is everything they have against you. I don't know how you're going to defend yourself." And he said, "You're a really good candidate for probation. They'll probably give you probation, probably, you know."
Probably.
And so, not knowing what else to do, I went with his pressure to take a guilty plea.
Mm. So before we get into that, I just kind of want to just make sure we're up to speed and that I'm understanding everything correctly. You bring some eggs in from Vietnam. You go through customs in, I believe, in Cambodia. You get to LAX. There's nobody there. Apparently, they expect you to just shout out in the air,
Philippines
"Hey, I
too.
got some eggs here." And so they they come to your home on October. They hassle you there. July, they raid your home. They send 30 to 40 armed officers to your home. They detain one of your neighbors. They put you in jail for 12 days. Then the judge gives you a court appointed attorney who expects you to come up with your own defense. Do I have that right?
Yeah, you absolutely have that right.
Hmm.
Yep.
So,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, so with this plea deal, you said you might be a good candidate for probation. You still don't really even know what they have against you because you haven't been able to see all the discovery, right?
Correct. And I also don't know exactly what I'm facing. So he pulls out this chart, and it basically he goes, "Okay, well, we won't know until the pre-sentence investigation how you're going to fall on this." He goes, "But I believe you're probably going to be about an 8. and then they'll give you some off for accepting responsibility. He said, but then they're going to try to tack some on for possibly the value of the birds, possibly the what else? What there was a couple of things he said. So you're going to kind of be in this range, and I mean that range went everywhere from 6 months to 30 months, and there's no guarantee of probation or any kind of consideration from the judge. The way it's you don't make a plea deal where the prosecutor says, hey, you say you're guilty and I'll give you a year. No, it doesn't. I guess it doesn't work like that in the feds. At least that's how this lawyer's explaining it to me. Of course, I don't quite trust him anymore, obviously, but
And
so
and
I blindly signed this thing that basically says I could be facing a penalty of up to 20 years. And he keeps telling me, "Well, don't worry, you're not really facing 20 years." But well, why does the paperwork say that?
so here's another thing, Jennifer, I want to point out to you too, and we can discuss it. You when we discussed this about your attorney, what was the time frame he gave you, to look over everything and to make a decision on if you want a plea deal or not? What did he explain to you your Sixth Amendment rights? Did he explain any of those things to you? I mean, my other thing again is how do you expect someone to take a plea deal if they haven't even seen their discovery? It makes absolutely no sense for any kind of judge or anyone to accept a plea deal if the defendant doesn't have what they need in hand. So what was the time frame like, and then what was kind of his reasoning for, I guess, expediting a plea deal with you instead of going to trial?
So I requested the discovery several times over between July and August. I mean October, excuse me. Between July and October, of course, he finally came back with those few prints and said he couldn't give me access to the rest. But it came time for me to have the plea, and which was October the 24th, I believe. And so on October the 22nd, he has a meeting with me in his office, and he's like, here's the plea deal, and you need to sign it. And I said, well, I'd like to look over it. I'd really like to read it over and have a chance to look at it. And he said, well, I need it by noon tomorrow. So I had less than 24 hours to make a decision. And this was, tomorrow being the day before I had to go into court and plead. And so, no, I didn't, I, I definitely did not get good representation.
I say it'd be very ineffective, very
Definitely.
ineffective. And honestly, it's like, who's he working for? Was he actually working for you, or who's he working for?
Yeah, I kind of have a lot of questions about that. Every time I would talk to him, he would say, I just spoke to the prosecutor. The prosecutor and I were talking about your case, and they just seemed like they had an air of friendship, that of course made me less important. My
You know,
defense.
I it prosecutors and attorneys, they do talk, right? They have to communicate, but like there's a difference between communication that's necessary between other stuff.
Right,
Like where's that, attorney-client privilege at? Where's you it shouldn't come off as if they're friends. You know what I
right,
mean?
and
So
it absolutely did. So,
and I feel like that's a big problem in our legal system. All these people are attorneys, right? They all want to get promoted and they're all buddy buddy. So at the end of the day, it's like, well, where are the attorneys actually representing the people? And our rights and our interests are protected. It's very, very rare, it feels like nowadays. And another day in an episode, the Sixth Amendment doesn't say that only those kind of people can help people. I just
right.
want to throw that out there.
So, I mean, okay, so you've gone through all of this and you you've got an ineffective counsel and things are just kind of where they are right now. They've killed your birds against your will after you told them not to. I mean, how was that even feeling? I mean, you went through all of this just to bring the eggs over into the country, you cared for them to hatch them, and then they just wipe them out. They never even they didn't actually test them for avian flu, right? After they were hatched.
No, they've never tested them or any of my birds for avian influenza, and that is one of the principles that they were standing on, that we could potentially carry avian influenza, but they've never tested for it.
Mm.
They did
Interesting. Yeah.
they did eventually. So after my release from jail, the Texas Animal Health Commission approached me again, and they said, "Hey, we'll give you two options. One option is we test, and then we come back and test again in 3 weeks, and we lift the hold." Now, if that had happened a year ago, hey, we would have been all for that. But
Mm-hmm.
so, or they said the second option, which is the one that they were really, really pushing, was for them to come and test once and me to join their fowl registration program. $125, and I'm signed up with the state, and now I could take birds to markets or do any of the things that anybody, highly licensed seller now. But you turn around, and the federal judge has made it a condition of my bond that no animals can move from my farm. Not my dogs, not the cats, not the parakeets. Nobody can move from the farm. Blanket hold on all animals on the farm. And once the state got their pound of flesh and they wanted to be out of it, um, we asked for a change to that bond condition, so that if I am facing a penalty of incarceration, that my family is not left to care for over 200 chickens, so that that financial responsibility doesn't fall to them. And she said, well, if you're going to get rid of any birds, you have to make a written plan and submit it to the USDA, the Texas Animal Health Commission, and the bond office. So now
That's
you're
excessive.
pulling the yeah, it's excessive. And you're pulling the Texas Animal Health Commission back in when they've already decided that they're done. And so at this point, I just haven't done anything. I haven't done either, but still can't sell any eggs or sell off any birds without permission. So still sitting here with a no, a farm that's not making any profit to sustain itself. So
Mm-hmm.
I I don't know, and it seems a lot that they just didn't know what else to do, because this is out of the scope of what they normally do on a day-to-day basis. They didn't know what to do, so she just put a blanket hold on all the animals.
And to be clear, what exactly are they charging you with?
So they're charging me with smuggling, which um, and that's a point of contention, because there are uh, statutes and stuff that cover eggs. There's specific rules about eggs, and they carry a civil penalty of a
Okay.
fine. So they took that and just disregarded it and said, well, no, we're going to charge you like a drug smuggler. If there's rules about eggs, why am I not being charged for eggs? Why did you, because that doesn't carry enough penalty for you, I guess, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to bypass that and charge me as a smuggler.
Did they cite any law that's been passed by Congress that you supposedly broke?
So the I'm not an attorney, so I don't know
Okay.
how exactly to explain it. But they said smuggling, and basically that what I've read, it breaks down into three parts. And I'm not. I even asked the attorney, do I have to meet all three of these criteria, or just one of the three? And this gentleman looks at me and says, I don't know. And because
My
the criteria
goodness.
I
the criteria
guarantee
on
you
the
that the
smuggling.
people
So
I guarantee you that the people who are hassling you about this also don't know. Like you've
Right.
already seen some of that. Like obviously
And
they
so
didn't know
Jeff,
what they're talking about.
well, and
so
one
what this
one
So, Jeff, what's
portion of
going on is there is a law that was passed by Congress, but it is the smuggling piece of it. When it comes to it's not illegal to bring, it's not illegal to have chickens or that breed of chicken.
right.
Comes kind of in a great area where we're getting with USDA making its own rules and things of that nature and trying to enforce their own policies, which, it falls under some, Supreme Court thing that was overturned recently, Chevron
Chevron
state
deference.
interference, and so it's yeah. So we're getting into the area there, um, and then for me, looking at this, I'm just like when I saw your story in the news, I had to find you. I had to reach out to you and figure out who your attorney was because I couldn't believe this and I was so frustrated. Me as a fellow chicken owner and understanding the time, the heart, a lot of stress comes with it because everything loves chickens and protecting them. All the time you put into those chickens, just for these government agencies to come in and kill them. I just had to ask you like what's going on and who's your attorney, and see what can be done. Because at that point, I guess I didn't even realize when I read it that there was a plea deal already that was done. And so what we should look at, because we got to have you back on again, right? So people can be up to date and catch up on the things. Well, what's the plan as of now, moving forward? What's another thing too is, and what's keeping you fighting? Where a lot of people will just bend, lay down and take it. Um, what's lighting your fire? Why are you different than other people?
You know, I spent so much time and heart and energy building this business. I started out in my kitchen hatching eggs with buckets of chicks on my floor with the heat lamps all plugged in and strings of wire everywhere, and um, it was of my heart. And at this point, I keep I'm looking out there at everything I've built, and they came in and shut me down. Like, we this piece of property that we purchased for, was specifically with the mind that, hey, there's this extra building where you can do your hatchery, and it's got an acre, and it's in the county, and like everything was focused to me, and the people around me helping me to grow and build this business. And we'd have a seating area, and we'd sit out there and look at the birds and hang out. And the people that I employ to help me with the birds, like there's so many reasons why I can't just let them kill it. You know what I mean? And even so,
Absolutely.
as a chicken person, that your birds have an optimal laying period of 2 to 3 years, right? So at this
Yeah.
point, these birds that I built so hard doing color breeding, and I've got 8 generations of color breeding out there, and trying to get
Wow.
these great fancy birds that, one of my passions is helping the kids who are doing 4-H have great quality show stock. And to be, but I mean, I was kind of going with that the birds that I have now, because we were shut down for an entire season and not replacing them, we have this whole generation of older hens that nobody wants those. They're not. So do we just let them all get eaten or slaughtered, or what happens to them? My farm normally, I keep the birds that we are actively breeding for colors or generation. Active generations are in the pens, and then I have a big area where the older girls and a few roosters and stuff just walk, where they have a free range area. And so now that we're to a point where that area is getting fuller and fuller, and the pins are getting less and less. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for something that I worked so hard to build.
And I want you say pens. I don't think people understand. Pens are not cheap. They're very expensive. You could build
Oh,
your own too, but hardware cloth is so expensive, and making sure it's predator proof. People don't realize that's a very expensive build to create more pens.
absolutely. And I'm always one who thinks that they need more space, right? I just happy chickens lay lots of eggs. And so huge, we have huge pins that, and we've even, so now we've come to this point, we've come this far that this last month we went ahead and took out about a dozen pins just because, well, I hate to say what's the point, but we're just not doing that kind of business or breeding anymore, and it's easier on my helpers if they can feed them more in mass than having to maintain all the water lines and all the feeding systems for all those pens. So just slowly they're slowly getting what they wanted, just breaking down the business and the flock a piece at a time. um,
It's so heartbreaking, Jennifer.
Yeah.
And then with the legal stuff, what's the next plan moving forward? So what's the next plan moving forward? And then we're going to discuss how the people watching can help you out.
So we've requested to pull the guilty plea, and apparently the judge gave the prosecution a few more days to make any objections to that. And when we did that, we claimed ineffective assistance of counsel, which was very, very true. And the that court appointed attorney, I've kept him involved with everything. I said, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. I said, it's not personal against you, but you did not give me what I needed.
Mhm.
And so he also asked to be recused from the case. We haven't gotten a response from that, but the next thing I'll need is an attorney who really cares about what happens to me and to the birds. And that's the next step is going to be to find somebody who will actually fight it.
Okay, gotcha. And so, yes, so you've done a motion to withdraw your plea deal. We're waiting on the judgment on that, and then say once they pull that, because there's no reason why, based off what we've seen, why they shouldn't take withdraw that plea deal, and then you can either have your rights reinstated and you actually have a trial with the jury of your peers, so that you can be fairly judged and actually get to tell your whole story, get to see all of your discovery, and then go move on from there, because they killed your birds. They're destroying your business. I feel like you're a victim here. You're the victim of the state and what they've done to you, your family. I'm quite sure your health, your mental health. Um, I'm honestly like I was trying to stare up a little bit a few times. So I was trying not to cry because it's heartbreaking to see what they've done to someone like you. And I seen your videos that you posted on Facebook with the birds dancing, super happy, and they took that from you.
Yeah,
And I feel like justice needs to be served. And this isn't right what's happening to you. And hoping that we can get that attorney for you and help with the funding, because these attorneys, especially these federal attorneys, are very expensive.
Yeah.
So Jennifer is going to have a gifts and go, and at the very end of this video and in the article and then all of our links is going to be there, so you guys can see how you can help and support her in these really really hard times, and then get the word out. We can't just see the information and keep it to ourselves. We gotta be loud. We gotta get this out, because Texas A&M, right? Farmers fight. That is the motto of Texas A&M, right? Farmers fight. You all say you support small farmers, then let's prove we support small farmers by helping Jennifer with her case and getting her justice that she deserves.
Yep. And I'll let you have the last word, Jennifer. I mean, for the people watching this and for the people who are going to read about this, especially as your story continues, what's the main thing that you want them to know about your case?
I would say the main thing is that, whether I was right or wrong with the initial bringing in of the eggs, the way that the government has handled this, the way that the state has used the feds to push their agenda, it's been wrong. It's wrong. There are rules about eggs. If I need to suffer the penalty that is created for somebody for the eggs, then I get that. But to try to take me and prosecute me as a drug smuggler, for some chicken eggs, they're just out of line. They're completely out of line.
Well, we will definitely continue keeping up with you on this, and we'll be having you back on as this story continues, and we will be here to celebrate when you beat your case. So I appreciate you coming on, but this
Thank
will be
you.
the first of several conversations.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.